Oh my God, I still right here.
Off screen.
Yep.
Ooh, wait, so we are live.
Fuzzy.
You are a little fuzzy.
I'm fuzzy.
All right, everybody. As you know, especially those who are watching it later, we're just going to give a little bit of time as people are coming on and give you that opportunity to connect. For those of you who don't know, this is my lovely bride, Teresa. And I'm cashing in a lot of chips tonight to have her come in and share tonight. So we're looking forward to our time around the table. Getting started with that. So just give us a little bit of time. I think we also have our dog somewhere. We want to introduce everybody to Reese because Reese is the bomb.com. No, she's the bomb.com. She's a pain in the butt and whatever. So Heather,
Yeah.
How are you? Good to see you. I knew that you'd be
Hi, Heather.
tuning in. So thank you for that. No Duke shirt today. I know Todd's jealous of that. Maybe I can get that later for you. So.
Fuzzy. Fuzzy.
So yeah, so just give me 1 second. Come here, Rope. Those of you who are just tuning in, this is the Beast.
Here.
There she is.
Here.
She's like, no, I want to be on the table.
Hi.
This is Reese, our cockapoo. So yes, most people love when I say cockapoo because it just sounds so gosh darn weird. But yep, this is Reese. We'll see if she behaves tonight. Every once in a while, she likes to protect our home by barking like crazy. So we'll see what happens with that. But again, thank you for joining us tonight with Around the Table. We decided to take it home a little bit, have a little bit of a conversation with my bride, and appreciate you guys connecting with us tonight. We're going to interact a little bit, not just with the two of us. We also want to be able to interact with you and being able to have those conversations. And so I want to encourage you that if you have questions for us, please take some time, write them in the comment box. I will do my best to pay attention to our conversation as well as answering on our phone. So those of you who think that I'm ignoring my wife because I'm on my phone, that is not true. I'm actually having a conversation with you as well. And so, yeah, we look forward to connecting tonight with you, and maybe also for those of you who might watch this later, I'll encourage you to connect with us in that way as well. So I think we'll get started. Is that right?
Sure.
So again, glad that you are here with us tonight. I know that, as I mentioned earlier, I had to cash in a lot of chips to have this conversation. Most of you may or may not have seen my bride around church with me a lot because she's a more behind-the-scenes kind of girl. And she much rather let me do all the blabbing and remain a silent partner in the background. But that doesn't mean that she doesn't have a lot to share, and that doesn't mean that she has a lot to be able to encourage with. And so hopefully this is a starting point or a restart, as you'll hear a little bit within our story of kind of what's been going on. So with kind of doing life together for the last few years. few years. So, babe, for those of you who don't know, why don't you just share a little bit? Where did you kind of grow up? And that, because I think there might be some good connect points for some of us with that. So where did you kind of grow up? What do you call home?
Okay.
A little bit of that.
I grew up in a town called Alsip, Illinois. It's just south of the city limits of Chicago. And people pretty much know of Alsip if you drive to like Florida and you take 294 through Chicago. We're about 15 miles before you hit the Indiana border. And at one point when you're on the road, it looks like you're going to hit the water tower. So everybody is like, whoa, I know Elsa, because it looks like you're going to slam into it. But the road does bend. So anyway, yeah, so I grew up there. And what else?
So does that, well, I mean, growing up in Chicago, does that mean that you are a Bears fan?
For the first 17 years of my life when I lived there, I would have said I was a Bears fan, but I didn't follow the game. So I I mean, other than like in 1985 with the Super Bowl
Sure.
Shuffle, like
Absolutely.
that would have been, you know, everybody knew the song and, you know, we were like, go team.
Right.
But other than that, I didn't follow football all that much. And then once I met Aaron, we were obviously watching Packer games, and he allowed me to ask a million questions in the middle of Packer games and was very patient with teaching me the game. And so then when I fell in love with the game, I was watching the Packers, and that would have been the 95, 96 when they were winning. So it was really easy to jump on the Packer bandwagon. So been a Packer fan since then.
Yeah, and you get harassed all the time for being a Packer fan.
Yes. If I say we, referring to the Packers, my family flips out.
Yeah. So it's
what do you mean we? Yeah. So
then how do we go from a girl on Southside Chicago to meeting a guy who's in the Hicks of Wisconsin?
We met at Bethel University. Well, it was college at the time. I just used to saying university now that Jada's there. And we met pretty much spring semester of my senior year. Aaron was a sophomore.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we pause there for a second to make sure that we're clear within that as being able to say she's older than I am. And she was a senior and I was a sophomore. And so I like to make sure that she was kind of the cougar of the relationship. You're not gonna come back with that at all?
No,
I thought for sure
whatever.
We're technically only 14 months.
He likes to say she's 2 years older than me, or anytime we like hear a song from the 80s, he's like, "Oh, I was in diapers then." Whatever. Anyway, so that's our little argument. So yeah, we met spring semester of my senior year of college, and we were on the same intramural softball team, and went on our first date a week before I graduated. So that would have been May 11th of 1995.
Where did we go?
It
was May 11th?
It was May 11th of 1995. He didn't even remember, did he?
I don't think I remembered it was May 11th. Interesting.
It was.
May 11th.
And then we went to go see Legends of the Fall.
Legends of the Fall.
At the cheap theater, because that's what we have money for. And then we went out for ice cream at Bridgman's, which I think is now a bank.
It's a bank now.
Yeah. So that's no longer a ice cream place, but yep. So yeah, I graduated then and was living in Minnesota still. Aaron went back to Green Bay to be with his family, and I was looking for jobs. I was not ready to commit to a relationship because I was putting in applications in Illinois and Minnesota and Texas, wherever I could find openings. And so once I got a job that August, and I knew I was going to be staying in Minnesota, it was a lot easier to say, okay, let's go after this. Granted, we talked all summer and wrote letters to each other because this was before email.
It was before email.
Well, I shouldn't say that. There was email,
there was a little bit of email,
but we all didn't have computers yet. So it was, still super expensive to have a computer. And we talked on the phone like once a week and, good old days. So
yeah. Yeah. So it had been since the August of 95 then.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's kind of funny, actually. I remember because we actually had our first kiss in Wapaka.
Mm-hmm.
And that next day, me and my family, my mom and dad and my sisters, drove to Mackinac Island, August of 95. And so what was kind of funny was that I sent a note to my dad this week because we went to Mackinac Island this year, so 15 years ago, in just short of 2 months. So it's kind of fun reminiscing. Oh, no, excuse me, 25
years ago. I was like,
yeah. 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So then we really started officially dating in August of 95. And then we both had enough bad relationships or rough relationships to realize that, how much longer do we want to keep kind of muddling around in dating world. And so by February of 96, I asked her to marry me.
We were married by August of
August of
96.
96. So
It was
definitely,
fast.
it was fast. Definitely gonna have a different conversation with my children around that. I'm not sure if I will be as open to it as
And
our parents
it was
were.
not shotgun. Jada wasn't born until 2000, so don't go there.
No, not at all. Well, part of the reason why I wanted to have Teresa on around the table and be able to have this kind of conversation is really twofold. I think one is just to be able to have the time together. I appreciate Sam and Kate being able to do that a few weeks ago, and just give the opportunity, because so many times everyone just sees me or sees what I am, either up front from the stage or in meetings or interactions or whatever else. And so wanted to be able to have a little bit of the behind the scenes, not only within our home, but also with us as a relationship. And not only as husband and wife, but as parents. And I appreciate my desire is to be able to really engage with questions that you guys are wrestling around with. And I know last week we threw it out there. We threw it out late on Facebook yesterday. And we want to be able to take this time a little bit to be able to answer questions that you guys have. We want to be able to connect with those felt needs within that. And one of the questions was from Heather is, how do you engage or interact with faith with your spouse or with your children? And what does that look like as you kind of continue to grow? And that, especially maybe one, if people are at different phases in their spiritual journey, but what are some things that you can really tend to? So I want to encourage you guys, as you guys are coming on, to take some time to be able to ask questions back. And we're going to kind of walk it out. And I know most people are saying, Aaron, just shut up. We want to hear from Teresa, and I'm working on it. But ask questions and being able to engage within that and within our story and stuff. And so early on what did you kind of see? I would say even before per se we got married, or even within our dating relationship, what was your walk and what was your kind of faith journey like at that point?
Like right at the time that we started?
Just right through there, because I know that you had walked through a variety of different things within your own faith journey and making it going through some struggles, but then also having it be more real than just kind of growing up in the church.
Okay, so I feel like I got to sum that up a little bit.
Please.
Like a little bit of the past to get to there. So I started out being raised in the Catholic Church until I made my first communion. And my parents had gotten divorced, and my mom started attending a support group at a local Baptist church. And then we started attending there. And when I was 8, I accepted Jesus as my Savior, and, went to church and did youth group and the whole thing. And I'm not a rebel by nature. I'm a follow the rules kind of girl. So I don't have this like crazy story of, come to Jesus moment kind of thing. But I still was just, I don't know how personal my faith was up until that point. And then I chose to go to Bethel, and was surrounded by people who had an established faith and kind of got to see it modeled and had opportunities to see my faith grow. And through, heartaches and challenging times, just learning to rely on God. So that summer of 95, I'll just skip to there at this point. I was nannying for a couple of kids. They were like 8 and 11. And it was mostly bringing them to and from swim practice and hockey practice. And they were pretty functional. We'd play and interact and stuff. But like, I had a lot of downtime too when they were at their practices. So it was easy for me to bring my Bible along and just spend time in prayer. This is, before we all had cell phones to distract us while we're, in the waiting for the practice or whatever. So I feel like that was a time where I was really connecting with God and searching for a job and looking for his will and trying to figure out what was going on with him, and just there were so many uncertainties that it was like, okay, God, I am clinging to anything you could give me at this point. So I would say that, was pretty, that was there. Aaron and I we volunteered at a youth group at a church in North St. Paul, and loved working with the kids there. Had small group, amazing small group kids. I still call them kids, and they're like 35 now. So yeah, they're 10 years younger than me.
Is it 10 years? So they're 37.
Well, yeah, they're probably turning 37. I'm not 47 till November. Anyway, so just, we spent a lot of time, they were our first kids, and a lot of time walking through difficult things with them, walking through difficult things with the church. Goodness, there were a lot of hard things early on. Even from the day that we got back from our honeymoon, things hit the fan, to deaths of our students, deaths of siblings of the kids who were in our program, just a lot of hard stuff. And we really had to cling to God during those times and be a support for each other.
And you had started teaching, and that was...
Oh, yeah.
That was...
that was hard.
A big challenge. Being right out of college, looking as someone, as you taught in the high school for a little bit, looking very young and trying to teach Phi-Ed. And health and just not necessarily having that support system. That many nights you would come home and it was either going straight to bed or you just worn out emotionally. Yeah. That it was a weepy evenings of just like, what am I doing?
Well, and he was still in college, so he's living the college, I'm up till 2 a.m. life, and I'm falling asleep by 7 o'clock at night. So it was a little hard in the beginning. So I think just, there were times where I needed to cling to God on my own. There were times where I needed Aaron to help support me during that. Are we transitioning now? Or
am I
rambling? Or?
No, you're great.
Okay.
And I think that was part of it is, I think there was such an immaturity in me. One, I didn't see it. But I think there was just such an immaturity that being able to look at what we're walking through now, as I look back at it, just like I wasn't attentive. I wasn't paying attention to what was her needs per se and how we try to communicate that. I think we just had this assumption of, well, we'll just figure this out. And we had these moments of time together, moments of connection, but a lot of it was around youth group. And a lot of it was around, like she said, the kids, our youth group kids. And I think, Heather, I think you asked a good question. How did you advocate for support from me? What was it that,
back then, that's a really good question. I feel like it's I don't know specifically how I communicated it. It was probably in the middle of a breakdown in tears, and I need you to help right now, because he wasn't just picking up on it necessarily right away. I don't have a specific example for you on that. Now, 25 years later, I'm like, I need your help. We need to pray. I need something, so it gets easier the more you practice doing it, I guess. And some people do need you just to spell it out and say, this is what I need right now. Because maybe they aren't aware, or it isn't necessarily what they would need in that situation. So they don't think to offer that type of help. So,
I would agree. I think it was through the meltdowns. It was almost like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? I thought this was supposed to be honeymoon. I mean, I thought this was supposed to be easy. So like, we're just supposed to have this wonderful time. And she's like melting down in front of me, like, what's going on? And so I think a little bit of that was my immaturity, but yet I was also very much, I wanted to be able to have that compassion and that empathy. And so learning to see that and sense that and feel that. But then having to walk through our own struggles of, I had this assumption that to have a family, it's just very simple, right? You're intimate together, you have sex, and you have kids. I mean, period. That's what I thought it was going to be. And so when we first found out that we were pregnant early on, well, actually not early on. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that.
We had to try, like, this is probably too much information, but you guys can handle it, right? I was a health teacher. So I was using no birth control for a year, and we weren't really paying all that much attention to things, but wasn't getting pregnant. My cycle was all over the place. So then it was 6 months of actively trying and taking my temperature every morning and trying to figure out when I was actually ovulating. So when we finally did get pregnant, we were like, I mean, I'm pretty sure the stick was still wet, and we let everybody know that we were pregnant.
Oh my, yes. That's why it says that this video is not made for kids. But yeah, we just was like, all right, we're pregnant. We're 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in, whatever, 5 weeks in, and we're announcing it to everyone and to family, and we're so excited. And then I had a youth event. Well,
the interesting thing with that, because we had already told everybody, I had gone through, it was May, so it was Mother's Day, and everyone's like, Happy Mother's Day, so excited for you. By that Saturday, I was having a miscarriage. So you were at a youth event. What was it? Was it a play of some sort? It was a musical, and I had something. I was at like a conference. Oh, I used to sell Party Light. The candles?
Candles.
Anyway, I was at a conference for that, and partway through had started bleeding. So then I was like, I'm out. So I went home and I let him know. But, he had 30 kids with them, and they were doing what they had to do. So
and I didn't know what that was. And long story short,
hours go by. Yeah. It's like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
We end up having to go to the ER and have our first miscarriage.
Yeah.
And just the utter pain of that. Just like, that's not the way that this is supposed to go. And it's still even the fact of, I still have the imagery, the memory of sitting on the hospital floor. They sobbing.
Let him stay in there during my procedure.
Well, but
that was crazy.
But it was necessary in the sense of not being alone in it. And even though I didn't completely understand, and even though it wasn't my body, it was us. It was our family unit. And so I think that was like another indicator of like, what this sucks. But like, all right, next, what's up next? And just like, let's move on and kind of carry on in that way. And I know I didn't have a true understanding of the impact of what happened for you physically as well as emotionally. And then surprisingly, relatively soon after the miscarriage, we got pregnant with Jada.
Yeah, like
because we weren't
3
really
months,
trying.
I think, maybe 3 months.
And we got pregnant with Jada and had a little bit of a scare within that because you started bleeding again, and we're like, oh boy, here we go again. And once we had Jada, we're like, okay, the world is all straight, the world is all aligned, and now we can just carry on. And yet, that wasn't necessarily the case. And so I think what I'd like just for a little bit is that there's kind of combine our conversations just a little bit with what it was like to raise Jada and trying to create that home of faith with her, but then also being able to look at your own personal journey of, because then we had 3 more miscarriages, and within that had a procedure done for Teresa, and then we were able to be blessed with Caleb, but then had another miscarriage, and so all of that over 99 to
7 years worth of trying to. We wanted to have 4 kids, and it wasn't happening. So anyway.
No, so a series of 7 years within that for you personally, as well as raising children and walking through changes within our life. And so just kind of, what were some of the things that you noticed within your own faith journey during that season?
That was a hard time because I definitely felt so blessed to have Jada, but was so heartbroken at the same time because it was never our intent just to have an only child. And so, but that's the way it was starting to feel like it was going to be that way. And, you know, grieving while trying to raise a 2, 3, 4-year-old, you know, and trying to pick yourself up and not be, it was a hard time. And I really had to dig in as best as I could during those times. I spent a lot of time journaling, a lot of prayers, a lot of tears. And there were times where, I mean, I relied on him a ton. I was like, I'm not going to the grocery store. I'm not leaving the house. I need you to help with laundry. Like, I couldn't quite pull myself fully together, you know? So I relied on him for stuff around the house. But then, you know, when I would have those moments, I feel like I shared those with you.
Yeah.
To the best that I could, but it, you know, he was working too. So it's not like he was with me 24/7 to see me go through each of the, you know.
What were those, what was that emotion, or what were those tears within that?
So for me, you know how they say, like, I'm not going to get the saying right, but something to the effect of, like when you go through the same thing multiple times, like you haven't learned the lesson yet. I was like, God, what are you trying to teach me right now? Like, what did I do to deserve this? You know, why can 17-year-olds who are smoking get pregnant and I couldn't in a marriage in my 20s when it should make sense. So I kind of had it out with God a lot of times. And go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There were times, and I've shared this before at church, so pardon me if you remember this one. But there were times where I felt like I was drowning and I could just come up quick enough for a breath before I was back down again. And after a while, I started to feel like it was God's hand, not just letting me up, but like holding me there. And that was something I really had to work through because I was angry at him, you know?
And I think that's part of where I wanted you to be able to go with it, is being able to share within that anger. And then when we're having that anger, it's easy to be able to be judgmental towards others of why not? Why not me? Why not us? Why others? And, you know,
oh yeah, every pregnancy announced was like, you know, a knife to the heart. It just, people don't have to try to make this happen, you know? So
really wrestling and dealing with, is it okay to be angry at God? And what does it mean to feel even to the point of lonely within it?
Oh yeah.
Lonely with you and God. And then depending on where my attention was, lonely even in the marriage at times, to be able to say, hey, are you having to do this alone? in the midst of that pain, because how do you work through that, and how do you connect with a guy that you're pissed at, and as well as be a pastor's wife, because by the time I was 06, I had started at New Life,
back in New Life.
And stuff, and so just really wrestling through and working through those pieces, and guiding that along, and just giving permission to be honest, which I think was a mixture of hard, right?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So then, are we staying there for a little bit, or are we now? How do we raise our kids in the midst of this, or was there more you wanted to touch on in there?
Do you feel as though you're still holding on to that anger? Do you feel as though you've been released?
For the most part, I feel like God has healed the miscarriages for sure. Yeah, because there was a time there for a while where, like, we already went there, so I'm gonna go there again. We closed up shop in 07 because I just couldn't bear the thought of another loss. And so I was just like, don't even look at me, don't touch me, just stay away from me. And so once we made that decision, I would say, how many years? 2, 3, 4 years, maybe even 5, where we're like, did we make a mistake? Maybe we shouldn't have. Maybe we were letting the pain dictate that.
I think we even had that conversation 3 years ago.
3 years ago?
I just think in the sense of having the conversation of, did we close up shop? Did we quit? Did we not trust?
Did we not hear God's
and
decision in that?
Yeah, and I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that, yes, it was in the midst of the pain that we made that decision, but I also believe that we knew that we needed to tend to one another, and we knew that we needed to tend to our family that was given to us. Right. And so I think within that, are there moments that, you wonder, am I totally stoked in a handful of years to be able to be a grandpa? Absolutely. Like, I love being able to hang out and play with kids, and I mean, even with Sam and Kate, and being able to hang out with Tegan and Quinn, and when Benaiah is big enough to throw a football at. I mean, do I enjoy those things, or even seeing the different kids at church and just giving high fives and having conversation? Absolutely, because I know that it's something that's placed on our heart. But I also think it was probably right and best for us in that season to say, no, we need to tend
and to try to heal and move forward. Yeah. So in those regards, I don't have the stinging pain when I see families of 4 now, or bigger families. I feel like God has healed that part of it. Kind of going back to earlier with me being pretty much a rule follower and, not a risk taker or whatever. There's just been a lot of stuff throughout my life that I've had to deal with that weren't necessarily directly related to my decisions or my choices or whatever it might have been. And so I feel like sometimes I still feel like I could be I just feel like I'm a punching bag. Or, okay, God, what lesson haven't I learned now that this is, something else is happening again, or whatever it might be. So I think through all of this, this is sad to admit, but this is the truth. I have become glass half empty, waiting for the rug to be pulled out from underneath me. And so with that, I'm guarded. Mm-hmm. And that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be that person, but that's a struggle I have to keep fighting against. So
it is, and I do appreciate you sharing it in that honesty way, and being able to even to be able to recognize what does that mean, not only to be guarded, but the guardedness that can take place with others, the guardedness that can, sure, at times take place with us, the guardedness that, hey, how are we protecting even our kids, and what does that look like, and what does that mean? And so I think struggling through that, can we look at a relationship with God way beyond transaction? Instead of looking for the other shoe to drop, or is the glass half empty or the glass half full, of being able to say, hey, how are we walking this out together? And in the incompleteness of how we do that in earthly relationships, and being able to recognize that yeah, even in our marriage, and the way that we raise our children, of how do we continue to work through those things in such a messy way, and that's hard at times. It really is, because I think both of us grew up, because we grew up in different faith households. We kind of came into, how are we going to do this parenting thing different. Like, I grew up in a very religious, you go to church 3 times a week, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I also felt as though that, I'm thankful now that the deposits of my mom spending time with me, of reading scripture and knowing the stories and memorizing things, and growing in that, having that foundation. Where it was a little different for you, that you got that more in high school, the faith journey piece, or middle school. Late grade school and into high school. But for us, we're like, okay, we want to give our children the freedom to choose. We want to create the boundaries of, this is what we believe, and this is how we want to follow, and this is what it looks like to pray, and this is what it looks like to have that personal relationship with God. But it looked different.
So, can I speak about your family just a little bit to tie?
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, for example, Aaron could only listen to the Beach Boys when he was younger, because that was the only safe secular music he could.
Which I still don't understand, because didn't they talk about like girls and
right? Anyway.
But
I grew up listening to anything on the radio.
She listens to the radio.
Now, Heather, I don't listen to your rap. Okay, sorry, honey, but so, like, we didn't necessarily limit what the kids could listen to. If we hear something super vulgar, we'll let it be known, like, okay, that might be a little much or whatever. But that would be an example of something that we would do. And then we would talk through it. What would be another, like, I think for you, because he wasn't allowed to listen to it, when he got a hold of the radio, he was like, oh, I just want to listen to whatever I can listen to on, what was the station?
101 WIXX.
That one. So
top 99.
So for him, it was like, because he couldn't, he wanted it all the more. And so with our kids, we obviously had boundaries, but we tried not to be so tight on them. We tried not, like, so, when we would tuck them in at night, we would pray with them regularly. Sometimes we would do a devotional, especially if one of them was struggling with fear or anxiety, or Jada was going through a phase for a while in elementary school. And so each night when I prayed with her, we started memorizing Psalm 23. And we would just add a little bit every day. And I was memorizing it right with her. So, it was kind of like a game for us. But, just talking about how God is your comfort and that sort of thing. So we definitely took times to do that, but it wasn't like every Sunday night we are having family Bible study and y'all better be there and have a good attitude. Like we didn't do that where we necessarily forced it on them.
Which isn't necessarily wrong.
No, it's not. No, it's not wrong.
Not to do because we wanted to create a posture of how do they naturally go towards it? How do you encourage it in such a way that when something does come up, that yep, we can have our response of how am I seeing God in this situation? How am I going to prayer in this situation? How am I trusting His identity in this way,
right,
along with that.
So like when the kids come to us with issues or problems, one of the first things I'll say to them, we discuss it, and then I'll say, can I pray with you about it right now? And most of the time they say yes, and they appreciate the prayers. And so some of that is just modeling for them how to turn to God when there are times of trouble. Okay. We also have to model to turn to Him even when times are good too. So I think that one's maybe a little bit harder to model, especially if you're doing your quiet time when they're away, because you need to be alone in order to do that. So it's maybe a little bit harder to model that, but
I think that's great. And I want to just touch on, just take a break. And again, I encourage folks that if you have questions or comments, please throw them in there. And Heather, I appreciate you sharing, especially knowing more of your story, Heather, and that balance between forcing it, but allowing it to be modeled and having it be a choice. And I think that's, for me, the encouragement that I want to be able to give is how do we still give permission to talk around these things and let them struggle through it, and be able to say we still wanted to create. No, this is our foundation. We want you to experience that it's love, it's truth, it's identity, and out of that love, truth, identity is how we live and respond within that. And so when Jay and I butted heads big time, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, at different times. And I remember, in 8th grade, just having this kind of real heartbreaking argument, discussion, whatever you want to call it. And once we finally got to the core of it, it was all around identity. And it was all around who she thought she was in comparison to others. But it's like, honey, how do we see, one, who God says you are, and then two, who we see you as? And so creating that foundation and working through those hard things. Last weekend, Caleb going with some buddies and going out and on his bike and touring around town and saying, hey, buddy, where are you? He says he's back at Chase's house or Mason's house. Yeah. It doesn't matter. And good old technology, Snapchat, he's not at Mason's house. He was at somebody else's house. And so calling him on the carpet and saying, hey, if you can't be honest with us in the moment, then how are you able to build trust with us? And what does that look like to be able to say, hey, these are the expectations and the privileges that you have. We don't want you to be bound by all these rules. But if you're going to break these different things, if you're not going to be honest with us, if you're not going to live in such a way, then that's where that restriction comes. And so I think being able to encourage that of, hey, how are we making wise decisions? Because what's our foundation? And so I think, Heather, the other challenge is obviously with you and Todd and trying to find that unity within that, is that sometimes that does take years. And the modeling that you're able to have and the permission that you can give him and the kids to be able to ask questions or to push back and forth, but to be able to allow in my opinion, both of those lives to be disrupted, and to challenge him enough to be able to say, hey, why do you want to hold on to that belief so much? And on the flip side of it, especially knowing more of your story, Heather, of seeing your growth from where you were to you are now is radically different, and that's obvious. And I would say it would be obvious to Todd as well, of seeing what life was before to not what it is now.
Heather, I don't know if you've ever heard of the books. It's called Power of a Praying Wife. And then there's another one, Power of a Praying Parent. They're easy reads. If you haven't tried it yet, maybe go through that, because it kind of gives you that perspective of I'm going to do all that I can on this end through prayer, and God.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, I wasn't sure if we had talked about that or not. So God's going to keep working on your family. He's not giving up on them, and you're clearly striving for that same thing to be happening within their lives. And so, yeah. Oh, there you go, Matt.
Yeah, I think that was a hint that I was supposed to do that, Matt. Is that what that was? Was a call out? Power of a praying husband. Okay. No, I appreciate that, and I think it is that, because I think so many times we look at the fact that, is it up to us? I mean, I think even you had made reference to this a handful of moments ago, about how have we grown in our interaction? Like, have I matured at all of being able to see where she's at, and being able to see, like, if she's struggling through something, am I paying attention to it? And I think being able to recognize it, there's times where I just can't fix things. I want to be a fixer. Right. I want to take care of things. I'm going to take on conflict. I'm going to take on issues. I'm going to take on all these types of things, because I really saw it for me, as that's where I was able to get my love and my adoration, and the accolades, I should say. Like, if I do enough for you, then you're going to love me. But what ended up happening is that there was times where, for Teresa, that she just wanted to share the hurt. She just wanted to share the pain. She didn't want me to just fix it. She wanted me to join her, or be available, or be present in whatever pain that was. And so I had to learn over these last probably 15 years of being able to ask the question, is that I can come home and she can completely download on me. I'm like, okay, honey, am I supposed to fix this? Are you just venting, or is it okay for me to share some suggestions? And the reason why I tie that into the prayer piece is that I realized that it's not up to me to make it happen. It's up to us to do life together, and being able to continue to trust how the Holy Spirit is working within our marriage, within our children, and being attentive in that way. And so I think that's where that shift is being able to say, you know what, there's things I just can't control. Oh, wait, I can't control anything, right? As much as we want to be able to believe that. And so how do we continue to lift that up in prayer? And how can we continue to give that over in that way? So that's something that kind of came to my mind.
Mm-hmm. Just to kind of cycle back a little bit, Heather, your kiddos are still young. You've got plenty of time to see them grow in their faith. And I think having those conversations with them whenever the opportunity presents itself to talk about what Jesus has done for them, what you're doing when you might be praying or journaling. I feel like things exponentially started to model themselves more once our kids were hitting issues with relationships and social stuff, not skin knees so much, if that kind of makes sense. So the older the kid, the problems get a little more heart-centered instead of just like physical, I hurt myself. And so I think when you start getting to those heart issues, the kids are going to start seeing it. And hopefully with what you're modeling, they will start to have a personal response to that as well. I hope that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's good. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have anything else within kind of thoughts or questions that you might have for either one of us, more Teresa than me. What's wrong?
That light is like.
It's fine on here. See, look, on here.
My head is not that orange and shiny, just so you know.
Mine is. You're fine. So I just want to encourage it. If you do have any questions, we'd love to be able to answer them. I think one of the things I think, I don't know, I guess kind of working through just even, maybe it's even expectations. I think working through expectations, not only with one another, but expectations that people have of us. And I know that that's something that we've talked about, that we've wrestled with. And I think, Steph, you're actually leading into something that I was going to kind of move towards. What's the hardest part about being a pastor's wife?
Expectation. No, I don't know.
It is. It's that expectation.
I've always said I am the worst pastor's wife. I don't play piano. I don't sing. I'm not overly gifted with like hospitality. Like, I'm just here. I fell in love with a guy who happened to be a pastor. It wasn't like I was called to find a pastor to marry. So anyway, that's my issue. Drink. Okay, it's water.
But there is some truth within the fact we've wrestled through that. We've had those conversations, and sometimes people understand those conversations of me being called as a pastor. Does that mean that Teresa's called as that pastor's wife? And there's times where I think we've done well with that, and there's times where I think we've stunk at that. There's times where I think in your guardedness you've stayed away, and I think there's been times in my protective nature I'm going to protect her from things. And so I think for us, it's even being able to look at how do we do this together in different ways. And there has been a variety. I mean, obviously early on we did it, and there's been different times where we've done small groups together and stuff. And so we definitely do that. But it is. I'm just going to be honest. It's riding this roller coaster, and it's times where we do it well, and there's times we suck at it. For a variety of reasons.
Yeah, we go through seasons.
Absolutely.
Where it's, things are clicking a little bit better, and then there's times where we're just trying to stay afloat and just so busy that, and exhausted. Yeah.
Sorry, now you hear Reese in the background, our guard dog. Ruth! Sorry, this is something that happens every night. Protecting the house.
Hey.
Sorry, just a second. And so I appreciate, Heather and Steph, your encouragement, and I appreciate that. And it is something that we talk through. It's something that we wrestle with. Something that we don't want to hide from. Here she is. Maybe she'll behave. Can you say hi? Not me there. See, look. There she is. And so we appreciate that. We appreciate the grace within it, and appreciate the reality of continuing to work through that together. Of how do we do this together in different ways? And we each have a part to play, and we each have that role within that, and trying to figure that out. So I thank you for asking that question, because it is. Is there anything else? Is there anything else that you say is harder? The hardest part about being a pastor's wife?
I guess the other thing would be, I guess it kind of fits along the same thing, would be expectations of Aaron. So over the years, we go through phases with this too, but there have been times where no matter if it's his day off, no matter if, it's the middle of the night, he's called upon, and, people need him. I'm going to tell a little story. There was this one guy who was a part of our church for years, and he would literally call consistently every time. Oh, no, I will. Every time it was Aaron's day off, and we'd be in the middle of something, and this guy needed something. And I mean, it was consistent for years. Can I tell the last part?
Well, it's not. You can't laugh at it because it's sad.
It's ironic. It's ironic. The guy passed away on our anniversary, so we get the call then that he passed away. And I mean, he was a friend. I mean, whatever. But it just was like, you've got to be kidding me. You know, just funny things like that where, you know, obviously we needed to tend to that on our anniversary. So anyway, there's things like that, you know, come up or whatever, but I feel like it hasn't been too bad lately. There was a couple of phases where it was just like you were just being called away consistently. Maybe it was more with the youth kids early on, and then
I still want to do a great job of practicing it. I mean, there's still distractions. I still have to learn to turn the email off and really being able to have those things. And I think that's what's part of the things that's hard at times is we joke all the time about I work just one day a week, and I even had a friend, Dennis calls me out, Aaron, you don't even work one day a week, you work like an hour a week. And we joke around that. But I think there's times where we don't see, and we may not share the toll that it takes on our marriage or on our family at times of just knowing that there are needs that come up at different times. And there's me learning that I don't have to be the answer to all those needs. And so I think that's part of it. I think the challenge of just working through those things together as a couple and being able to share the different pieces within that. And so I think we look at that situation, and there was a part of it that was like, wow, you gotta be kidding. This is happening or that is happening, or okay, I gotta attend to this or stuff. And so I think those things are taxing and a toll at different times that can't be as quiet.
And it's like it's heavy stuff. It's not just you know the calls that Aaron gets that break his heart, and he has to deal with it privately because he can't share with anyone. But yet, you know, it will affect him. I mean, it happened even when we were away this last time visiting my family in Chicago. Like, I could just tell his demeanor. He was struggling because he was heartbroken for somebody, you know? So it's like, it's just one of those situations where, you know, it's needed and it's necessary, but it impacts him, you know, emotionally or mentally, and therefore it somewhat impacts our family too. So
not somewhat, it does impact within that. So good.
I'm good.
No, we do appreciate you guys taking the time, and we did not have this scripted at all. We were just going to kind of flow with what took place, and we appreciate the encouragements that you have here, and want to continue to go towards the things that God has for us. And as we've mentioned before, we want to do it well. We want to do it honoring. We're not going to do it perfectly. We want to continue to learn and grow in all of that. And I understand that sometimes the realness in different ways isn't comfortable for people. I know that I had to learn the hard way of what it meant to be on a pedestal and then get knocked down. And so it's not even our desire of just being able to say, hey, we always have to walk around in the mess of it. But I think it is something we're going to at least be honest with our mess and want to be able to model how we love one another, how we love our children, because that's the love that God has for us. And so, again, I thank you for your encouragement. And Allison, thank you for just being able to look at it's based upon God, not who other people say we need to be or what we need to be or how it's supposed to look and stuff. And so, Heather, thank you for oohing and eyeing over us. We appreciate your friendship and your kindness. You were funny. So thank you. She is. Come on. You guys got to meet Heather. Maybe we'll do her on the table.
She'd be crying right now if she were here.
She probably already has cried. So we're gonna get in trouble for that. But maybe we'll take a trip out to Kohler and do it around the table with Heather.
There you have it.
Yeah. But again, thank you guys. Anything that we can pray for you on, want to encourage you to throw that in the chat. I'll give you another kind of 10, 15 seconds to do that. We want to be able to encourage you in prayer and walk with you through that as well. Those of you who do have any questions in relationship to church stuff, please let us know. Just again, a reminder, if you are healthy and you feel comfortable, please join us on Sunday morning. You are more than welcome within that. We have the proper precautions within that. But if you're not feeling well, or if you're not comfortable yet, we completely understand. That's why we want to continue to offer our online services to you. And I guess I'd really like to know from you is, are there other ways that we can or that we need to engage with you? Because it's not just about the views. It's not just about who's watching when or whatnot. It's really about how are we engaging and trying to do the best that we can to walk with people through this season and beyond. So I just want to encourage you within that. Please let us know. Email me, email the office, email Sam, give us a call. We want to be available to that. So why don't we just take a moment to close in prayer, and maybe you want to do that for us and pray for Heather's request.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the beautiful day that you've given us, and we thank you for this opportunity to connect with people in a different way, and a way that is safer for those in our community. And Father, I do think of all of the schools, the teachers, the administrators, just so many decisions that need to be made of what is the best approach for keeping not only the children, but the staff and families safe in the midst of education. And Father, I just pray that there will be solutions that will be made that will allow the kids to get the most out of their education that they can at this phase. And we trust that that you've got us, and even with all the uncertainty, Lord, help us to rely on you. And we just look forward to better days ahead. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you guys. We again appreciate your patience with us and following along and journeying with us in that way. And we look forward to all that God's going to continue to do. So we thank you. Grace and peace.
Bye.